have people coming and hanging out for a little bit, and then we'll get moving. I'll share this out on Twitter. And that's Sherwin's cue to keep our guests happy. So we are also the IT and the creative and everything else that goes on. So
we kind of joke. We share responsibilities, Brent. I'm like the chief marketing officer, if you will, and Rusty is in charge of IT and finance.
Well, I tell you one thing about leaving NASCAR and going my consulting. I think I miss the most is my IT guys.
Oh, yeah.
I bet.
Oh, yeah. When things fail here, I'm the IT guy. So my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter. So, yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, I'm no good at it either. I struggle mightily with it.
Well, what's funny is, this is our 282nd episode. We've been doing it 5 or 6 years now. And, I mean, I've got this switchboard and all that stuff, and I've got everything set up, but it's all one button now. Rusty was very smart and put all this stuff together. Now, today Rusty has no idea how past Rusty did all this. So, if I had to replicate it or figure it out, I'm in trouble. So, and of course, past Rusty didn't write down any instructions because that's how he works. We blame everything on him. So,
that's awesome.
Anyway, let's see. We got a few folks hopping on. Great. Awesome to have everybody. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. Make sure I got everything else up. We also don't do any editing at the end, so pretty much bookended from when we start to when we say we're done. That all goes on iTunes and everywhere else podcast-wise. So we edited for a few shows, and then finally, I think I turned to Sherwin. I'm like, that's enough. let's just do this thing. So we've gotten a lot better about how to fill out dead space.
Like social media. Don't say anything you don't want the world to hear.
Yeah, exactly right. So no, it's all good. Let's see. We'll get.
I don't think it's been a problem yet. I mean, we try to keep it pretty clean because our language is pretty despicable when it's just the two of us, but we realize that can be very distracting when you're trying to generate content that somebody might want to listen to in front of their children.
Right. Right. So words like spit, we'll use that one.
Spit and ish and
we'll just have fun with it. But yeah. Let's see. Okay.
They slip out every now and again. You might be surprised by this, Brent. The first person to ever say the F word on our show was actually Julia Landauer.
Wow.
Of all people.
Yeah.
And we had her on 3 weeks ago, was it?
Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, fantastic.
Very cool.
Yeah, great to talk.
And she's from the Northeast, so that's part of their language.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't a problem for us. We didn't care. It's funny that we got like almost 180 episodes in before neither one of us had said it, and then she just dropped one. Awesome. I'm like, man, we managed to not do that for like.
Is she going back to Europe this season?
Sounds like
she
it.
Is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Cool.
Yep. We were celebrating whether she had the highest NASCAR Europe finishing standings for any American ever. So that was like sweet last year.
Yeah, not just for a woman, but for an American.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great series. It's fun. I went over a couple of times. It's they're doing some really good stuff over there.
It sounds really fun. She had a lot of good perspective for us too. Now that this year we're 7 road courses and everything, she's able to break it down for us, which is awesome. So anyway, gentlemen, we ready to get started?
Ready.
Good over here.
All right. Well, with that, like I said, I'll bring in Brent. You'll hear it all. It's all good. And let's see. Get this show on the road. All right. We are recording now. Welcome, y'all! That's right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 282. It's Tuesday, March 23rd, 21. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace in the PTM Podcast Studio in Atlanta, Georgia. As always, this podcast is sponsored by you. That's right. You go to patreon.com/PETM. Join the What You Drink Club for as little as $1 a month. Get that free koozie. Get some stickers. Best part is, every cent this year, we're donating to sponsored drivers. So join the PTM Posse today. Be a part of the sport you love. This week's show brought to you by our official sponsors at that $5 and up per month level. They are Aaron Bearden, Robert Keplinger, Coleman McClam, Eric Kepner, Ryan Kiefer, Patrick Cleary, Jeff Brown, Brandon Crock, Kathleen McDonald, Brandon Carl, Rika Porter, Julie Bozzietta, Grant Third, Younger Motorsports, David Mullins, Patrick Johnson, Brett Morris, Crystal Smoke, Fred Rosado, Chad Knapp, and Stacey Coleman, Lisa Chinana, Rick Houston, Sarah Anbari, Evan Roller, Matthew Bishop, Harry Bolzania, AJ Evangelistas, Janet Scott, Les Miller, and Jumpy Bob. Woo! Got it all in. One breather. Sometimes it takes two.
You about ran out of gas,
Oh,
didn't you?
man. Yep. We coasted across the finish line, but we got there, baby.
Fumes.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the show from the PTM North Carolina studio. Pregame engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's up, dude?
That's right. Mooresville, North Carolina. NASCAR USA.
Yes, sir. Woo. Man, yeah, I might have to take a breath, like you get a little lightheaded after holding your breath for a while or something. I think that's what it was. I need to work out. But that all said, so Sherwin, this is the point where I usually give the speech of all the accolades and everything else for our guest, but this one I don't know what to say. Welcome to the show, former president of NASCAR, Brent Dewar. Brent, how you doing?
Doing great, guys. Good to be with you.
How's that for a? You know what? We can throw it on the resume for next time. That welcome to the show. PETM alum and former president of NASCAR.
Beautiful.
So,
that's much better. I like that.
Right there, hand in hand.
So I'm in my Winter Park studio, I guess, for the alum here, which is about an hour from Daytona.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Well, it's funny. It's called Winter Park. Does that mean that's where people go for the winter? Because it can't be that hot or cold.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the idea, 100 years ago when they came to Winter Park. It's pretty sweet little town, about 30,000.
There's a lot of people that work for Disney that live there.
Yeah, it's just north of Orlando. So it's the first city north of Orlando. So in part of Orange County.
Gotcha. Cool.
Very nice.
Well, Brent, I don't know if we primed you or anything on it, but we start the show the same way every time. Brent, what are you drinking on tonight?
So I am drinking a Blanton.
Oh, sir.
Bourbon, just because I'm on PETM. So
yes, sir.
Top shelf, and I put 1 cube, and I'm just having a little sip.
That sounds amazing, and I've had that one before. That's some delicious stuff and affordable
and I have Coca-Cola, but I don't mix the two because my buddy that gave me this would kill me if he saw me put Coke in it. So I do a Coke chaser if that.
There you go.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you got to save the Coke for white label Jim Beam.
Yeah. So cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Blanton's is in the Wild Turkey family, isn't it?
Hmm.
I think it is. I don't know for sure. I've got a Miller Lite, Rusty, as it were.
Well, not to be outdone, Miller Lite, sir.
Wow.
And of course, I always got a little sidebar of that firewater stuff.
Well, when there's sidebars we're talking about, there you go.
Yeah. Did you happen to see my Happy Gilmore shirt?
Ninth green at 9 o'clock.
It fits for what time we start the show, right?
Oh, I love it. Ninth green at 9. With the sprinklers on. I dig that. Oh, that's fantastic.
Dress nice, right here.
Dress nice.
In parentheses.
I didn't see that part. I love it. I've got the old Go Ryan shirt. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I figured we'd bust that one out.
Speaking of Ryans.
There you go. That was that's a good hat. Here's the thing. We were at wherever we were, Talladega or something a few years ago, and I was like, I am getting me a Ryan Blaney hat. And I could not find me a Ryan Blaney hat that just really screamed Rusty. This is Rusty's kind of hat right here, my Zion National Park hat. But I just couldn't find one. And then Sherwin busts out that one, and boy, now I've got hat jealousy.
Yeah, this one just spoke to me, so I bought it.
Awesome. That's my daughter's favorite driver.
Oh, Brad awesome.
Blake.
Well, I'm not surprised. He's a
great guy.
Charming young gentleman.
That's right. Funny story about a hat. We were in Blue Ridge, Georgia this past weekend. They've got a little town, I guess, like their town square, I guess, or the main drag or whatever, and there's a bunch of little shops there or whatnot. And as we were walking by one of these shops, this husband stopped in front of this I don't know, outdoor gear store, and me and my wife busted out laughing because he had to be, I don't know, in his late 40s, early 50s, something like that. And he stopped and he looks in, and his wife goes, "Do you want to go in?" And he goes, "Well, it looks like they got a lot of good hats." It's just like, my man.
But Brent, Rusty and I are notorious for hats. But between the two of us, we probably have 100.
Oh, me too. I buy a hat all the time, and my wife gets so mad at me. Dude, you got to donate these, and they all have a story, right? You don't want to get rid of your hat.
Right,
so.
Right. So,
exactly.
The fact that this man stood there and that was his way that was his way of communicating. Yes, I would like to go in. But well, they got a lot of good hats. I loved it. So Brent, this is a NASCAR show. You're a NASCAR brass. So let's start with NCAA basketball. Why not?
Wow.
And the question on the sheet is, how broken is your bracket at this point?
Totally broken. And I think all I've got left is Gonzaga. I always picked Gonzaga for my Final Four, and I picked them to win in my bracket. My other three teams are gone. I have Syracuse. I had Syracuse go to the 8s. I'm always a Syracuse. I lived up in the Toronto area, so I cheer for Buffalo Bills and Syracuse. I've got a little bit of that as I've lived around the world, and so I've got Syracuse still in it. A lot of big upsets, which what makes March Madness special. It's unpredictable. And so how are your brackets now that you asked?
Well, now that you mentioned that, so Rusty's got I got to backtrack a little bit. I got to eat a little crow from last week. I believe my exact words were, Georgia Tech plays Loyola Chicago first. They should be pushovers. As it turns out, a combination of our star player and ACC MVP All-Star, whatever you want to call him, not being able to make the game, and probably more important that Loyola Chicago ends up they're actually pretty good. They went on to beat number 1 Illinois. So to the victors go the spoils, and no offense to any of the Loyola Chicago fans and alumni out there. I'd love to hang out and have a beer with you, but. Yeah, we got beat, and so with that, that kind of busts my bracket because, in the end, I'm just a homer. Like there's at no point can I go, well, Georgia Tech can't beat that team. Every time you're like, well, we could beat them. Well, next thing you know, you've won the championship in your head, and so that's about.
So I knew I was in trouble when I had VCU going to the Elite Eight. So I'm driving back from Tennessee on what was Friday or Saturday, whatever it was, when they got withdrawn. So I went, man, this is not going well. So, but it's
yeah. Well,
I think they're doing a great job. The coverage.
The best I ever did in a bracket pick, and I didn't do one this year because I just kind of have gotten over picking a bracket, and it's made it less fun for me over the years. But the best I ever did was being exactly what Rusty just described. I picked Georgia Tech to win the championship in 2004, so I won my group because they made it all the way to the game as a 3 seed. So I think I pretty much gave up on brackets after that.
Oh man, there was one year where I got the entire 1/4 of the grid correct, which included a couple upsets and stuff, and I was on pretty, I felt pretty good about myself then. Of course, I completely dumped the rest of it, but I was happy about that one. And I have nothing to prove that. Folks will just have to trust me, and I don't know if I'm trustworthy enough, but.
Well, I was talking about that with Brandon last night on Lap Traffic about how I wonder if the weirdness of this year meant that whoever got to pick the seedings maybe didn't do all their homework, because we've already lost, 2 2s, 2 3s, and a 1?
Yeah.
And it's a little early in the game for all that. So I don't know. I think some teams might have got seeded wrong.
Yeah, I think the Midwest is the one that the whole bracket in the Midwest is busted, right?
Just upside down. Yeah.
Well, Big Ten's only got Michigan left, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, so
I lived in Michigan for many years, and I had them as a surprise upset. So my friends, if you have any friends in Michigan watching, they'll be mad at me, but I just,
well, I was on a Michigan-based podcast last night.
Yeah.
I picked those 16s and 12s perfectly, and I didn't do it this year. So, but Gonzaga's still there, and Syracuse. I'm cheering hard for my Qs. So
there we go.
Yeah.
Well,
all right. Well, I might have to sling some ACC love their way.
Yeah.
Brent, from NASCAR president to NCAA guru, and now what is Brent Dewar up to nowadays?
Yeah, so probably some of your folks probably don't know, but I spent 30 years in the auto industry. So I was the head of Chevrolet here in the United States, North America, and then worked in Brazil. I worked in Europe, all with General Motors. Almost my entire 30-year career was with Chevrolet, and came back as the head of Global Chevrolet, and then left GM in 2010 and went into a consulting practice, which was automotive consulting. Did a lot of environmental things, electric cars, mobility. So this is, probably in the 2010 to 2012 timeframe. And one of my clients was NASCAR. So I was working when I knew the family, and I knew Brian really well. So worked on a project with them in 2012 and 13. And one thing led to another, and ended up joining NASCAR. And I was living in New York City. I moved from Detroit to New York so my daughter could go to school in New York, which was kind of a dream for my wife and I. And then we had an office in New York, but became the chief operating officer first at NASCAR. And I was there from 13 to 18. And then my last year, I worked on the project with the team to merge the public company with the private company and take it all private. That was my last part. So that was the end of 18 into 19, I should say, end of 19. And then went back to my consulting practice, automotive consulting, working with principally automotive dealers, all brands. And then the pandemic hit. I just got it started, got my clients, got my roster in place, and then this thing that changed all our lives forever. So I'm still doing that. And surprisingly, I've been really busy. I don't understand some of the impact that happens in sectors of the economy, but my side of the business has been really busy. So I've been doing that. I also work in 3 startup companies, all in the automotive space. So a group out of Silicon Valley, a group out of Chicago, and then one in New York. So been doing some of that. A lot of fun. I'm the only one with gray hair on the team. So it's good. And it's, kind of an innovation, kind of give back, so to speak. Because when I worked at GM, I worked on all the development of all the new cars, from electric cars to hydrogen fuel cell vehicles to the Corvette. I was Corvette was my baby my entire life. That's why I joined the auto industry, fell in love with the Corvette at age of 9. So I'm back in the automotive consulting. I'm not working in motorsports per se, other than I talk to the guys and gals all the time, and both whether it's at the race team level or NASCAR in particular. So I'm still involved, but trying to enjoy it more as a fan these days.
It's funny that you say that about. Well, you can see all the gray hair here. I switched careers about 2 years ago, and I went from a company that was pretty well established. It wasn't big, but it was established, to I would call it a much younger company in terms of, it wasn't startup necessarily, but it was, I call it teenage years. And
Sure.
That's what I really love too, is being with a company in those sort of, hey, we did really well with all these small clients. We're about to go with all these huge enterprise clients. We don't know how we get there. So I love being in that sort of environment. And I went from being probably one of the, top 5 youngest people to probably one of the top 5 oldest people at my current place, including the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, all these C-level.
Yeah.
It's an interesting turn. Now they deserve all of that. This isn't jealousy speaking. It's just an interesting vibe when when you go into somewhere that's young and has so much energy and everything, and it energizes you.
Yeah, I loved working around the world with General Motors and Chevrolet. I love making the products and bringing them to market. Really enjoyed. I love racing. I mean, that's my passion, is racing. Ever since I was a little guy, I love horse racing. Not only the 4 wheels or the 2 wheels, but I like the 4-legged kind as well. So NASCAR was a fantastic transition, because I was there as the sponsor side, with Chevrolet, the development side, working with the race teams, going all the way back to Hendrick and DEI and Joe Gibbs when he was with us at Chevrolet Pontiac at the time. And great relationships. So I love that. And it was a natural transition for me to come onto the business. What I learned, though, is although business and NASCAR is a business, the sport, it's a sport at the end of the day. And you got to remember it's a sport. And we had loyal, passionate fans that bought our cars. But when you get into sports, it's 24/7, 365. It never turns off. And so I found that really, really exciting. And, I tried to engage with the fans as much as I could while I was at NASCAR, whether it's through social media. We met at a tweet up in Talladega. And I love doing that. I was just trying to listen. I was trying to hear what the fans were saying and just try to give a little bit back. So I missed that part. The schedule's tough. 38 races. It's tough. And when you have a young family, I have a young daughter. It was that part I don't miss. I don't miss I like watching all the races, and I'm glad the schedule's the way it is. It's just tough going to it every week.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of our listeners have heard me tell this story, but so I walked up kind of late to tweet up at Talladega. I guess it's been 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I obviously knew Bob Pockris from before, from all the various tweet ups that we've been to. And he looked at me and saw what shirt I was wearing. And he's like, "You have got to get a picture with Brent Dewar with that shirt on at Talladega. That has to happen now." And so that's how you and I met. I was wearing my More Short Tracks shirt. And that's how we engaged for the first time. And so it's a funny story.
If I could, I would have my More Road Course track shirt. Yeah.
Well, I have that shirt too. I'm just not wearing it right now.
I've seen it. You sent me a picture. Yeah, I love road course racing. I just love it. And that's, like the photo in the back. I mean, you look at Le Mans, so I was schooled at, road courses from, the Corvette racing days and racing Corvettes and being in charge of that program. I like going right and left. It's great.
Yeah. That was one of the things that took probably a while for us. And I would imagine that there's probably a lot of NASCAR fans that sit in our same seat in that perspective, is that trying to understand what makes road course racing interesting. And it really was kind of the same with short tracks too. When you first jump into this sport, you think Daytona and Talladega. And then you start to learn from there and start to develop whatever it is your perspective is on what you like out of racing. But 7 road courses in the same year for Cup, man, I'm stoked.
Yeah, me too. That was after my time. I was on the team doing the schedule every year, and it's hard to change the schedule. There's so many moving parts. I think the fans don't realize all the complexity that goes in it, and we, part of the benefit is picking the schedule far in advance so that they can plan these changes. So Steve O'Donnell leads that with Ben Kennedy, and I think they've done a great job at coming up with the courses. Like for me, that when they announced the schedule, to go to Circuit of Americas, I went there with IMSA, with Jim France and Ed Bennett and the guys, I think a couple of times. It's a great track. And Austin is just an amazing city. So for the fans to go down and see a NASCAR race at COTA, Circuit of the Americas, where we race Xfinity a number of years, I've got a chance to go up there. That's the heart of NASCAR racing up in Wisconsin. It's great racers, great fans in a brutally tough track, a technical track. So it's going to test the guys and gals. We've got some gals probably racing up there as well in the Xfinity. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a really fun season and different. But I applaud them for putting it together. It's hard. Now they've set this bar. It'll be interesting what they do next year. So
absolutely. Yeah. And we've been talking about it for probably Sherwin, like a year now, where there's an opportunity here to do something, and NASCAR took advantage of that opportunity, which is really cool to see that happen. And then Brent, to your point, like, all right, what does this mean for 2022 and beyond, and especially with the new car and everything too. One thing
when Marcus Smith came up with the idea of the Roval, that was a tough sell, and he came to Steve O'Donnell and I, and we talked about the technical aspects, because to fit it in and to try to make it a road course had some limitations, and we just kept working it. I remember when we took it to the industry. I mean, it was just the three of us against everybody else, and it worked. And I applaud Marcus. He's very creative. He's always thinking out of the box. And about that same time he talked about dirt in Bristol, and I kind of remember saying, like, let's just get this roval done first. And some of the stuff they've done with the grass, or the artificial grass in Charlotte, trying to keep the splitter off the ground, and there's some really cool innovation coming up. So I'm excited about this weekend. I have literally no idea what's going to happen, as everybody doesn't. So it's going to be interesting whether it rains. That's going to change if there's no rain. How do they keep the track moist and wet? I remember going to my first Chili Bowl with Tony Stewart back in, I think, when he won in 07. I went in 06, first Chili Bowl, and then went back in 07. And then he took me to a dirt track when he was kind of left. We were trying to get him back to Chevy, and he was at Toyota racing for a couple of years. And what was that? 08, when Gibbs went to Toyota. And so Tony took me to a dirt track in North Phoenix, north of the Phoenix race. And he was racing there like his typical Tony Stewart does. And so I got to love dirt racing and what some of those kind of race formats will bring. So, these are NASCARs. We're going to see how those big cars operate in a, half-mile track, and see what it's like. So what do you guys think? You guys looking forward to the race?
I'm curious. I'm very curious to see. My concern is, I think you already basically mentioned it, is because we put dirt down on top of concrete. I'm worried about how much moisture they can keep in the track. And then to your last point, the cars are so much heavier than what we typically see in your weekly series dirt racing, even if it's your travel series like Outlaws. Those tracks they race on they're all dirt compound from top to bottom, which means they hold water a lot better. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I'm glad that NASCAR is being adventurous. Yeah. I'm a little skeptical, but I'm still got an open mind about it. If it works, it works, and let's do it. I just, Bristol is such a wonderful place that I'm like, I mean, where else could we have done this? But I don't want to poo-poo it because I appreciate them thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, we've all been to, a dirt race somewhere where it's not uncommon to, pause for 40 minutes to let the track, get, add water to it, get it moist again.
Till it, water it.
We're not stopping the race for 45 minutes. So, maybe a bit of rain in the forecast is not a bad idea. I don't know how they're going to do that, but the team they put together at SMI, I mean, they're bright folks. I mean, they got some good engineers working this, and I know they researched it. It's not going to be for a lack of effort, I can tell you that. And so, I don't think it's going to be a novelty like some people are saying. I think it's going to be good racing. And I think we're also going to see, we've got, just like we used to have with the road course ringers, we've got some NASCAR drivers in that Cup Series that are pretty good dirt racers. And whether that translates to this car, we're going to find out pretty quick. But we've got some guys that probably have never really been on dirt. And it's going to be, it's going to be entertaining for sure.
Well, it's been interesting to see in preparation, knowing that this was going to happen, how many guys have gone out and sought opportunities to get in a dirt car just to get a feel for what it might be like. The Kyle Bushes and the Chase Elliott's, and even Ryan Blaney. People think about Ryan Blaney being the Buckeye Bullet's son, but he never raced dirt. Not growing up. He was on asphalt all the time, racing karts and whatnot. So, those guys are all out there looking for opportunities to get in, to get in a dirt car or be in a dirt situation, which is, I think, why we see 11 Cup drivers are going to try to qualify for the truck race. And this is a good time for me to mention, for a friend of mine, Brandon from Lap Traffic is going to donate $1 for every lap that a Cup driver leads in the truck race. And I've honored him by matching that, and that's for what is it, Freddy's Pizza Kitchen in Detroit, and it's to benefit autism research.
Oh, that's super cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Hey, I'll triple down. Just send me a number, Sherwin. I'll PayPal it or whatever. So
No problem.
Tell Brandon I'm in. We got. I hope they lead 400 laps, and my wife might not hope that, but we'll do it. That's super cool though.
Well, now that I'm an alumnus, I guess I'll triple down.
All right, my man.
I'm in.
All right.
Oh, that's awesome.
We don't want to
Awesome.
we don't want to scare your next guest off next week, but yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
So it's funny. I've been reflecting on this all week to try to say what I wanted to say about Bristol Dirt, and the best that I could come up with was, imagine there's somebody at your office, and he comes in every day in jeans and a black shirt, jeans and a black shirt, jeans and a black shirt, right? And he's not gross or anything. He just owns 10 pairs of jeans and 25 black shirts, and that's what he brings to the office every day. That's what he wears. And you end up buddying with him. You go out for a few beers and drink stuff, and eventually you loosen up. And you're like, hey, what's with the black shirt and jeans? And he's like, that's just what I've always done, and that's my thing. And so you start kind of going, hey, how about something different? How about show up, man? Maybe just wear a different shirt. Maybe wear a red shirt one day. Maybe wear something blue or a Hawaiian shirt or something. And eventually you go out to enough drinks with him, and you get enough people out there and in the momentum, and he's like, all right, I'll do it. I'm going to change it up tomorrow. And he shows up tomorrow with his underwear on his head, and you go, whoa. Well, that's not exactly what I was thinking, but I applaud you. Hey, this is on us now. We said something different, and here he is. So Bristol, they threw dirt on it, and it's like, whoa, that's not exactly what I meant, but hey, that's let's try it. Let's see what happens. Going back to Brent, what you were talking about with the Roval. I can roll back, and I remember what I said about it after it happened, after the first race happened, and I said I sat down with like a pen and paper to write down all the things that I thought were terrible and stupid about this race. And after the first stage, I just put my pen and paper down and went, this is so awesome. What was I thinking? This is fantastic. Yeah. So yeah. I'm looking forward to something like that.
Yeah, I was a little nervous because, I was one of the lead instigators to make it happen, but it was great. And it's still one of my favorite races of the year. I mean, I love the Daytona Road Course this year. I thought that was an incredible track. Of course we'd seen that before with the IMSA and the Rolex, 24 hours of Daytona, but it's a different race, different car, different everything. And it really showed the talent of the drivers. So yeah, the Roval was another Marcus Smith creativity. So I hope he pulls another one off this weekend.
Yeah.
He smashed that for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this because it's something that I want to see. How long, or if ever, will it take for us to get a stock car division in the Rolex 24? Whether it's a Cup platform or an Xfinity platform, I don't care. I want to see a fifth division of stock cars with NASCAR drivers in that race to build even more momentum for the Daytona 500.
It's possible. I mean, I think I love sports car racing. For people to watch it on TV, it's hard, right? Because there's a race within a race within a race. And I think, Fox did a really good job, and NBC's doing a really good job, the best they can. It's harder, and to add another series simultaneously makes the racing more challenging for the casual fan. And that's the key to grow the sport. You've got people like us where, I watch all racing, so I'm not normal that way. And if it races, I watch it. And so I think it would be hard, honestly. I think what I love is seeing the best drivers in the world jump in all these very different cars. And you see their NASCAR guys can perform very well in those series. I think there's a lot of work to still do in that. I think sports car racing's got a great future. I don't see it in the short term. It's not the answer you want probably, but I don't see it at all in the short term. I think there's schedule challenges. You can have them in that one race, but you're better to put them in the other cars, because once they leave, the Rolex 24, they go racing in whatever other series they're in, whether they go back to IndyCar or they come to NASCAR. That's the challenge. It's tough scheduling these guys.
Yeah, I know that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I guess maybe what I should have asked is how do we get more NASCAR drivers or more teams interested in having NASCAR drivers, get in a GT or get in a prototype and be a part of that race in order to drive the attention, try to pull, because those of us that love racing the way you do and the way Rusty and I do and a lot of our friends and the people that we've associated with, we watch that race because we just love racing and we're ready for racing to start. Like,
right.
The 24 is, hey, racing started. We're at Daytona. Woo! Go team. And, but having those names that you recognize, those things all matter, like Chase racing this past year. I guess it's a couple months ago, not past year, but that draws attention that race might not normally draw, and I want that race to have the kind of success that they need it to have for it to continue to be a thing, but I want to see more NASCAR guys and girls involved because I think that makes it more fun for us as NASCAR fans.
So I think the way to get that, and they're starting, I think you saw more in the last couple of years, is the schedule needs to tighten up. And when you say tighten up the schedule, that makes a lot of fans really nervous because I don't want less races. I like all the races, right? But we pushed hard to come up with this idea for double headers. Mm-hmm. We did it last year a bunch of times because of COVID, but it was originally planned to pilot with Pocono. I think from a fan standpoint, that's going to be, and hopefully we get the fans in Pennsylvania when that race is coming up in May or June, because you can tighten the time. And if they're not gone 38 weeks, if we could have, 38 races over 30 weeks or 29 weeks or 28, then you free up these guys who they need time off. They really don't get time off. And, it's the longest season. So I think if you tighten it up, I've never met a race car driver yet that doesn't want to go racing, but they got a family, they got kids, they got a wife, and they got to have some of that downtime. And so I think if we tighten the schedule up, you'll see more of them. They won't wait for Daytona. They want to be racing at the Rolex. And I think you're going to see a much more integration of the team owners over time. You see the Ganassi's and the Penske's, but you're going to see more of the younger guys, maybe the Justin Marks of the world. They've raced on both sides, gives them an opportunity. Who knows where, Denny and, Michael Jordan will go in the future in terms of expanding. You see Jimmy Johnson, there's Jeff Gordon's racing those series. So I think that's where the opportunity will come, actually.
Well, I thought last year when we had this opportunity that we knew we had to do something different because we had this global situation that we had to manage, is there's an opportunity to do a 6-week summer stretch where you race either on a Tuesday and a Saturday night or a Wednesday night and a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. And you can squeeze some of those races in. And if for no other reason than shorten the season, it would also pull us away from what is the heavy spot for the NFL in college football and get us away from when eyeballs are going to be highly focused on football and pull us out of that. So there's about 6 weeks in late June through July where we could do double headers every week, and we could compress that schedule, just like you said, to maybe 30 or 31 weeks.
Yeah.
And give these guys a break.
Yeah. So for me, that I love that stuff, right? I mean, I watch racing every day if you let me. I think what a lot of fans don't realize is, this is the commercial side of the business. I mean, it's all about the ability of people watching television, right? I took a lot of grief when we moved the start times back a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
A large population of our country does not live in the East Coast. And we have a huge fan base in the West Coast, in California in particular, right? A lot of California drivers, whether it's Harvick and Larson and on and on and on.
There's more drivers from California than there are from North Carolina.
Yeah. And so when you're doing 1 o'clock start times, I mean, you're cutting into breakfast time. And so it's not breakfast at Wilmington. So there's a little bit, and it's not a matter of our fans waking up to watch the race earlier. There's just not TV sets turned on at that hour. So, it's math. And so if you don't worry about the commercial side of the business, but to a Fox and NBC, these things matter, right? Because they're paying for it. They're paying
100%.
They're paying for that. And so trying to find the right balance. You want to get it to a later start time, but not too late that you break into their prime time. So you want what we call neo prime. It gets into 6:30. It gets challenging when we have a rain delay or, extensive crashes and the race goes on past a schedule. And that actually works against us and works against the networks. So that's the balance you're trying to find. What most people don't appreciate, people don't watch TV on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The core fans like us will. So if you take an audience of 3 to 4 million of a Sunday afternoon, and Sundays is the biggest day period. Sunday beats every other day of the week for television, from afternoons right up through prime time in the evening. Even with all the changing watching demographics, with Netflix and everything else, it's still Sunday's the king. You're giving up a 4 million audience for a 2.5, 2.7 midweek. And so that's the part we never talk about, but that's the bump that comes in there for you and me. I'd watch races Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd watch every day. But that's not the case for the demographic at large. And the other part of we're not a small sport. We're a national big sport. And so you have to pay attention to those part of the economics, because with that, not only drives the audience, which allows them to sell advertising dollars, which gets the big players. If you're Geico or Bush or whatever, General Motors, like when I was the chief marketing officer at General Motors, I was buying ratings, right? I was buying, Survivor, and I was buying Friends, and I was buying all these big shows because the audience was delivering 27 million. And NASCAR delivers a big audience. A lot of people talk about declining ratings. Everything's down. Sports is still the king. Sports is by far the king. It's the only really thing that draws the big numbers. And so that's what's happening. So yes. And so part of what I was trying to push, and others like me, is this double header where you're working races on the weekend. Back to back is very efficient, and you're still getting those Sunday dates. Having said all that, both broadcast partners are probably interested at some level of doing a summer break to try to see if we can tell people to tune in on Wednesday and come to a Thursday race in the summer. And so I think there's hope for it. I think it's going to happen, but it takes everybody in the industry working hard to get the people to show up. And we used to do that for when I used to sponsor MLB, we used to do that for the midweek games in the summer, but we would all promote it pretty strong to get an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Funny. My previous life or job, if you will, was in television media and ratings and advertisement sales and all that stuff. So, knowing what I knew from that and what people were paying and everything, and hearing it from your perspective is really cool. I will say the Pocono doubleheader, despite, or I should say, in contrast to what I'll call my skepticism at first for the NASCAR Roval, the Charlotte Roval, in stark contrast, Pocono doubleheader was the hypest thing that I've ever. This was pre-COVID, of course. So if everything had worked out right, then it was still would have been. But me and Sherwin, how many people did we have signed up? We were going to have 20 plus people, I think, at a tailgate for Pocono.
Yeah,
and
Brent,
we live in Atlanta, and we're going to Pocono doubleheader. Do it.
We had 20. Yeah, we had 25 people that were in for the Pocono double before COVID hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people haven't been to the race. It's probably one of the best fun weekends you'll ever have is to go to Pocono. If the weather's, accommodating. Igdalski is doing an amazing job up there. It's so fan friendly. And when we lived in New York, my daughter was 8, 9 at the time, and she never missed a Pocono race. She saw her beloved Ryan Blaney win his first race in Pocono. That was a big day, father-daughter day. I had to be neutral because I cheer for all of the guys at the time. But for her, when Harvick was chasing him down and we were right there in the finish line, took her to the, victory lane. But Pocono is a special place. And it's different, right? You get the tricky triangle but it's a great fun weekend. If you take someone to Pocono, you get a chance to make them a fan for life.
So what do you think? Obviously with all the tracks contracting stands because of the way the sport has evolved, good, bad, or indifferent, It seems like one of the things that Pocono might be missing is a small grandstand in the Indy turn. Maybe on the inside, maybe on the outside. I'm not sure which.
Sure.
But I wonder if they're considering something like that, because that seems like it would be a pretty cool place to watch a race from.
Yeah, they're a really innovative group. We talked about Marcus Smith. I mean, we would come up with crazy ideas all the time, and they would always put their hand up, to do stuff in Pocono. So I don't know. I haven't had that conversation with them, but they're always listening. So we have to get that to them, I guess. We'll take our 25. I'll join your group. I've got a group. I think there was 10 or 12 in my group, a couple of guys from Seattle and guys out west that we were all going to Pocono together for the race last year as well. So, I mean, it's the thing about the seating, and that's misunderstood as well. I mean, I'm a baseball fan. I grew up being a big fan of baseball. I mean, all the stadiums have to right size because it was never about the seat. It's about the experience, right? And some of the seats and some of the places at baseball, I mean, I remember going to Tiger Stadium for the first time and, bought my ticket and I sat behind a pole for the whole game. I mean, there was a pole like blocking the view of the diamond. And, I loved going to the Tigers game, but that was not a great experience. I much prefer the new stadium in Comerica Park in Detroit, way fewer seats, but a significantly better experience. And so I think if the fans can realize the investments these tracks are making, if you go from old Phoenix to new Phoenix, it is phenomenal. It doesn't matter how many seats there are. It's the number of seats and the experience that you can have at that new stadium in Phoenix. And, arguably it's probably one of the best, racing experiences you'll ever have if you're lucky enough to get a ticket to Phoenix and watch a race there. It's good racing, but it's the experience. So that's what's happening. I think the other part a lot of fans don't realize is that these are all private investments these guys are making. There's no public-private investments like at the baseball stadium or the football stadiums and stuff like that. So, they really have to, stand in front of their bankers and plan out capital expenditures over a period of time. And they're innovating. They're taking seats out, putting the more distance for leg room and you put your koozies up and get your drinks in the appropriate place. I mean, that's as a fan, that's the stuff I want, right? I want a better experience. And when you get a better experience, and as I said before, you're going to get a fan for life. And then once you go to your race and have a good experience, you're going to watch it on TV differently. You're going to enjoy the nuances more on TV. You're going to listen to Sirius XM or MRN or PRN, and you're going to hear the race better because of what you had in the experience. If you had a bad experience the first time, you're not turning it on the next time.
Right.
And so the feed is very compelling in that regard. And so I applaud them what they're doing. There's lots of innovation, what they're doing at each of the tracks. It's just going to get better.
I'll expand on that and say, you go to the track and you get the experience and you watch it on TV and you're going to more places. And then next thing you know, you start a podcast, and next thing you know, you have the former president of NASCAR on your podcast talking about this stuff. So it all kind of comes full circle there.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And me and Sherwin having been to Phoenix, what was it, 3 years ago, I want to say. And I would say, Sherwin, if we talk about our top memorable experiences there, probably on the track stuff is not even in the top three. In terms of like the hotel, or I should say the motel that we were at, and the fun that we had with the other NASCAR fans that were there at the pool. We were all jumping in the hot tub. None of us had brought any swimwear, so we're in our undies just jumping in the hot tub and having a good old time. And then me and Sherwin went to the Camping World display before the race started. We walked in and out of every camper that was there, and shout out to Marcus Lemonis on that. But it was just really cool, that whole experience, like you keep talking about, the experience part of that, and that was super cool as fans.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being at the meeting when they talked about moving the start-finish line, and being a fan before and working at Chevy, well, that start-finish line in Phoenix, you died in the sun. I mean, it was like what should have been the greatest place to have a ticket was not a good experience. And by moving that over to where the shade is going to be when that sun starts to set, was very thoughtful. It was all around the fan experience. And then now you've got that crazy shoot that's always there. It was always in the backstretch, but now it's, you're dive bombing to race to home. I mean, gosh, those are the kind of innovations, thoughtful, that is 100% with the fan in mind. And they're doing this at every track that they're coming up with, one after another, trying to each one outdo the next.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that based on how many experiences we've had, probably averaging for a while for probably 12 years, going to 4 or 5, maybe even 6 races a year, is you start to learn from the fans about where it is you should probably sit. So like when we go to Bristol, we sit between 1 and 2 because you can see the whole track. It's right in front of you. You got the whole track. And when we go to Darlington, we sit high up in 4, closer to turn 3, because you can see the whole track. It's right in front of you. And you can see those guys busting it through 3 and 4 and almost losing the car. And those things,
you get a good shot of the Darlington stripe.
Yeah, it's, you get a really good view of them putting the stripe on the wall in 1 and 2, and then you get a really good view of them not having any control over the car coming through 3 and 4, and hearing the tires squeal and all that thing. And those things all matter. And I don't know how that necessarily relates to the lay fan or somebody who's maybe only ever watched it on TV, but they still like race cars and haven't been there. But we sat on the front stretch at Darlington the first time we went, and we're like, we can't even see the cars because the angle of the grandstand on the front stretch doesn't allow you to see the cars running up against the fence. And that's the way they come off 4, is right up against the fence. You can't even see the car until they dive off into turn 1. We're like, well, we need to be in a place where you can see the car.
Yeah.
So we moved down to turn 4 so that we could see the cars.
Took me 3 years at Indy, because we sponsored Chevy with the Indianapolis 500, and we had the pace car. It took me like 3 years before I finally got a seat that I could actually see the race cars we were sponsoring, because they go by so fast. I was never in the right place. And when you get the right seat and experience, you're going to enjoy the race a little bunch better.
One of the coolest places that I went, so I did the infield experience when I went to the Indy 500 2 years ago, and one of the coolest places to watch that race take place is on the big mound that's on, I think it's hole number 4. Because you're about 6 to 8 feet off the ground, which means you can see almost everything except for what that inside grandstand blocks.
Yeah.
And we watched some of the race.
I haven't seen the race from 4, but I've played the course. Yeah.
You see 3 and 4 perfectly. You can see everything from there. I'm like, man, this is a really neat place to watch a race, and I'm standing on a golf course like 10 feet away from a green. I'm like,
did you make the putt?
No, I was like, no, I was trying to figure out, okay, when can I come back and actually play this course?
Right.
But
I recommend it. It's a really nice course.
So Rusty and I, we talked about COTA early in the show. Rusty and I circled that one on the track and said, okay, this is the one we're definitely going to. And I've already decided I'm definitely going to the Indy NASCAR doubleheader at the Indy road course, because I got a friend in Indy, so it makes it easier. But if those are the only 2 races I go to this year, I'll be a happy person.
So I got a question for you guys. So tell me, where was your first live NASCAR race?
Oh, it was together.
Oh, Rusty, you want to do this one?
Holy smokes. Oh, man. We went to Atlanta in 2004. So, we're fairly young in terms of NASCAR fandom. We've talked about it probably as recently as the last episode, where my grandfather was a huge NASCAR fan growing up, and so I would sit around and watch the TV with him and whatnot. And I would my name is Ricky Wallace, so I would always root for Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace. And
sure.
And so when I joined a fraternity in college, and Sherwin had started his NASCAR fandom or whatnot, and he's like, nope, you're not Ricky anymore. You're now Rusty. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool with that, because I've been following NASCAR for a while. So for the last 20 years, my nickname's been Rusty. So all that said, we decided in 2004 we were going to go to the spring Atlanta race, and we got 4 of us together to go. and the guy holding our tickets, he imbibed a little bit too much the night before because it was a Sunday. So we rolled up to his house, and he was like, "I'm not going. Here's your tickets, guys. Go." So the three of us now hopped in our buddy's truck who had just graduated college, and we went to Atlanta, and we rolled up with way too many beers for this number of people, and we were there's all kinds of stories with it, but we sat in the Weaver.
Lot more.
Yeah, we sat in the Weaver stands on the backstretch of Atlanta, and we saw people run down to the fence in that first lap, and this was I guess we'll call it back in the old days /04 when I guess security wasn't that there weren't enough people to stop 1,000 people from running to the fence, but we ran down there, and sure enough, right in front of us, big crash, off the very first lap and everything. And I think, was that the same race, Sherwin, or was that the next race? I can't remember now.
No, that was the 05 race.
Okay. Yeah.
So the 04 race, we told this whole elaborate story, Brent, about how, we went through security and they opened up Rusty's cooler. He had a drag along. And we were probably outside the limits on what you were supposed to be in terms of like cubic footage. But we had like 70 beers in this thing for three people.
Just pause for a second. You should love the sport just on that alone. Name one other sport you get to bring in.
That's
beers.
Well, that's where I was headed with this commentary.
Even if they never even raced, that's the coolest sport in the world that allows you to do that.
He throws it up on the counter, and they open it up and they go, "Oh, it's all cans? Oh yeah, y'all are good." And so we go in, and to Rusty's point, we watched the first start of the race, and all these people go down and scatter up on the fence, and we're like looking at each other, going, "Well, hell, we're gonna have to do that next time." So when there was a restart, we go, I'm up there where the curve section starts. Like I'm 10 feet off of the wall, which is 14 feet off the ground, and they go by at 200 miles an hour, and my hat blows off, and I'm like, damn. Because it was a Georgia Tech hat that I had that started out white that was like dirt gray. I had it for like 10 years. And I was like, well, shit, I guess I lost that hat. And I climbed down from the fence, and the security guard was like, okay, you guys go back to your seats. They were real nice. And this guy walks over to me and he goes, I saw this hat blow off your head. I think this is yours. And I said, that is my hat. And I really appreciate you bringing it to me. And I was like, NASCAR is where I want to be.
Yeah, right. So heck of an experience the first time we went, in Atlanta in 04. And we've talked about several racetracks now, but I mean, it's me and Sherwin's goal, going in up until COVID, that we would just go to a new track every year. So, we talked about Phoenix, we've been to Vegas, anything in the Southeast, we've been to all those, and trying to, expand it further and figuring out what the next one. So, Brent, throwing the question back to you, what's our next track? Where do we need to go to? Now, Pocono's in the cards, so let's. Yeah,
so have you been to Sonoma?
No, but it's on
Sonoma
that.
But my dad is from Vallejo, just like Jeff Gordon.
Perfect, Jeff Gordon country. Yeah. Now that's a special because you get to have not only great racing and road course racing, but the weather, the ambiance, a little glass of vino here and there. It's a pretty special weekend.
I try to convince Rusty and our other friends who are married that you could actually make this a couples weekend that includes racing. Because there's Napa Valley and then there's the racetrack, and they're right there together.
Yeah, we're talking. they're not even separated. I mean, they're all around the track. I mean, so yeah. So Sonoma is really special. I love Mosport up in Canada. The road course, they do a really good job with Ron Fellows and the guys up there, truck racing. Love to see them get more races up there. Maybe that'll happen someday. But that's a very cool track. You guys have done all the northern ones like New Hampshire and that stuff, or have you done that yet?
Not yet. Southeast.
We haven't done New Hampshire or Dover or Pocono. We've been to Michigan.
True.
Okay. If you've been to Michigan, you've been to Auto Club.
Yeah, basically.
That's
It's pretty much the same
That's a
racetrack.
joke we would get from fans all the time. Well, it's a cookie cutter. I said, no, it's not. But
Well, so 2022 is when it's going to get fun when it turns into something a little bit more like Martinsville.
True.
we'll see.
And maybe we'll fly out to Los Angeles and go check that out.
Yeah, that's a great market. Oh my God, the fans are amazing up there. That was one of my daughter's favorite tracks was Auto Club as well. Made really good job for the fan base up there. So I'm glad they're going to do something up there. Which is going to be great. Yeah, I've been to them all. So it's a matter of what you like. I mentioned Wisconsin is pretty special to be around people like us that just love racing. And I think it's going to be a really good test this year. We'll see how the Cup cars do.
I really want to go to Road America a lot.
Yeah. And it's a great time of the year to go up there. I mean, the weather is should be great. I like, have you been to Richmond? Richmond was always my favorite track for
Rusty's driven a rental car on Richmond, but we have not been to a race there.
I sandbagged that thing. We've talked about it on the show plenty of times, but I sandbagged it behind the pace car or whatever. And then on the backstretch, I just put the hammer down. Didn't know that my wife was recording video at the time, and I screamed, "Woo, NASCAR!" as I was going, 80 miles an hour is the top speed that I got on the backstretch, but it was in a rental car. It was fantastic.
Part of my life is like a Forrest Gump movie at times where I do these things that I have no business being there. And when you get to be the head of Chevrolet, we sponsored, MLB, we sponsored the Super Bowl and got to go to all these cool things and, the Breeders' Cup and horse racing. And so I loved Richmond. So we sponsored the Chevrolet Rock and Roll 400 and we would bring bands to that. And that was I could justify it from a business standpoint, but it also was a little bit of a personal thing where it's much like Phoenix. I mean, it's a great size of a track. So it's a short track, but with big speed, and you can see the race from all angles, all places. We just got to keep working to get a tire that works, and we'll wear properly in Richmond. We'll get some great racing there again. Because the best racing in Richmond is the night race in terms of visual, but the best quality racing is in the heat of the afternoon. So we got to find that right balance. And I know the competition guys in Goodyear are working hard to always get that right optimal, wear.
Right. Now, I know we're running up on time here, but I did want to ask you a couple things.
Sure.
One, so we love asking this to folks who are in the sport because we get great answers. Ross Chastain gave us a great answer here, and he's very much a humble guy, so he didn't press hard or anything. But it's around. Was there ever a time where it was a "Do you know who I am" kind of moment? In that Ross Chastain. He had forgotten his hard card at one point, and he ran up, and he's like, "No, wait, but I'm racing." And they're like, "No, dude, you don't have your hard card. Where are you at?" And he's like, "But I'm in this race," and so he had to run back and go get it. Again, he wasn't being mean about it or nothing, but he was like, "Oh man," he was beating himself up over it. But I'm wondering if there was ever a time where you're like, "No, I'm the president of NASCAR," and they're like, "Yeah, whatever. I'm the president of the United States. What do you want?"
Yeah, that's pretty normal for me, because I'm kind of unassuming in ways. I've probably had that a lot in my life, both at Chevrolet and at NASCAR. I remember one time I was being interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine, and we're coming up with electrical car, and it was precursor to what became the Volt. Mm-hmm. And so I was being interviewed by the guy at Rolling Stone magazine. I'm sitting outside waiting to go in, and the guy came up to this really big, tall dude next to me who looked like he could be the head of Chevrolet, and came up and said, "Mr. Dewar, pleased to meet you. I'm so-and-so for Rolling Stone." And, they had just interviewed Elon Musk just before me. And the guy goes, "No, I'm not Mr. Dewar." And I go, "That's me." So the guy had that look on his face like, "Man, you run Chevrolet? I mean, how's that possible?" But it goes with the territory. And I always said, you just got to be yourself, right? It's not the image of what you're supposed to be like. It's if you're true to yourself and remember your roots, where you came from, it'll do you well in life. Ross, good story about Ross. He's an awesome guy. We took him on a couple of tweet ups with me a couple of times. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how we got ultimately were able to get him on our show. But you said some things right there that fit perfectly with something I wanted to cover before we finish the show, about being true to yourself. Your perspective on Noah Gragson this weekend and maybe before.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Noah. I mean, he obviously came up through our development. So I got to know all these guys. I mean, NASCAR does a really good job on Drive for Diversity and the driver development programs. And so I get to meet them when they're really young. And so I'm a big fan of Noah. He's a great race car driver. He probably needs somebody to give him some hugs and coaching there in the older guys. I saw some tweets this weekend that some of the guys took some tough shots at him. Noah's a passionate guy, and hopefully he's going to find his way. There's a little bit of piling on these days with Noah, but I believe in him. The guy that I know with the young guy, and so he's got to get himself back and tuck his tail a little bit, but still be true to himself. And hopefully he'll get back to winning ways, and that cures a lot of things, right? I mean, it's had some tough breaks, and some of the stuff that's happened on the track is unfortunate. But I'll tell you one thing: NASCAR is tough on safety. So if there was any doubt that things weren't safe, things would come down. There's like a zero tolerance when it comes to safety. So when I saw the penalties or lack of penalties, it kind of tells you what their view of probably what happened last weekend. So he's a good kid. But I hope one of the older guys put their arm around him and do some coaching. Somebody said Kyle Busch was reaching out to him. I don't know if Kyle has or not, but he needs somebody like that to help him out a bit.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was at with it, and I was kind of struggling to try to figure out whether, do I want to be a fan of this kid or not care one way or the other. But I tell you what, from an athlete's perspective, man, if you walk Noah Gragson down, he's going to throw hands, and I love that. I think that is awesome. Yeah. Defend your turf at all costs. And you know what? I watched that replay a whole bunch of times, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I could have seen if they'd have found him for safety, because there was a right front tire changer that was kind of involved. I said, but I used the exact same words on Monday night, and I hadn't heard them yet, from Brett Griffin on Door Bumper Clear, when he said, it's not like he's revved up the motor and dumped the clutch and just crashed into him. Did he back up too far and hit the car? Yeah, he did. That's probably out of bounds. But it wasn't like, I don't know, when we talk about the safety aspect, it didn't feel like he really endangered anybody. And it sounds like NASCAR felt the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't talk to me about it. I was listening to Sirius XM when I was driving down from Tennessee when it was on. And, so, I've been part of the sport for a long time. And the fact that, they have zero tolerance. They're going to err on safety every time. And when you cross the line, they're going to come hard at him. Any driver. So I think he's a good guy. There's a reason people like Noah, and he's himself, and he's not going to be the favorite driver of every fan, and that's great. That's great for the sport. Well, but like I said, he's a young guy, and he's got a long road ahead of him. And this is the time when a veteran driver comes down to him and greets him, and whether that's Dale Jr. or Kyle, or doesn't sound like it's going to be Denny, but
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it be, Junior reach out to Denny or to Jimmy and say, "Hey, Jimmy, can you talk to him a little bit and say, this is what I screwed up. This
could be Kurt. It could be Kurt Busch. They're all Vegas. They're all Vegas boys, but he's the real deal. And he impressed me when he was 16. He's a good wheel man, and he's got a personality bigger than life, and we need those things. We need those things in the sport. And a big fan of Daniel Hemrick. He's a great race car driver. He's way overdue for a victory and a win, and I'm sure that's part of it too. There was probably lots of emotion on both sides. He's close, and hopefully he'll get a win. they both showed their emotion, and fortunately nobody got hurt all around, and I think that's a good thing. That's the most important thing.
Well, yeah, I think that all the things that we want out of NASCAR happened in that exchange.
Yeah, and you know what? Noah's got the finishes to back it up lately. So it kind of feels Tony Stewart-esque even. So I'm digging it for now. We'll see where it goes. And speaking of finishes, let's start closing this thing out. And it's time to do some picks for Bristol Dirt. Sherwin, last week, Chrissy picked Chase, who finished 38th. I picked Brad, who finished 28th. So, hey, Chrissy, I got you there. You know what? And we challenged Chrissy that she had to do better than her co-host, Deb. And I'm not sure 38th is quite going to cut it, Chrissy. So, that all said, Sherwin, you picked Logano, who finished 15th. So, big winner there. No horn for you, but, it is what it is. And I've all but given up on lap traffic. That's a total scam. I don't know what the deal is. So
it definitely is a scam.
So that all said, let's do some picks for Bristol Dirt. Brent, do you want to start us off as the special guest? Tell us who you got for Bristol Dirt race.
I think I'm going to go with Christopher Bell. So I think it's going to be a favorite for the dirt guys. He's special on dirt. I like Bubba and Eric Jones as well for here as well. It depends where they come in and how the race plays out. We talked about the wet versus dry. If it gets chunky, I think it's going to play to Christopher Bell and Larson. I think it might get a little bitey and a little chunky based on the weather. So I'm going Bell. Larson's pretty strong these days, but I would keep him on 1.5 miles at this point. They got that program dialed in pretty good. So my pick, Christopher Bell.
Well, there you go. Sherwin keeps beating me, so I keep getting to go first and losing to him. But you know what? I got to pull the ace in the hole there. Brent's already mentioned him. Kyle Larson, with the momentum that he has lately. We didn't talk much about this last week's race, but he pretty much stole the show, minus the guy that stole the show. And so with his dirt prowess, how can I not go Larson? So I've got to make up some room, Sherwin, on the Total Scam of Lap Traffic podcast racing or their fantasy deal, that whole what have you. So Sherwin, who do you have?
Well, I picked up 30 positions, by the way, in the old Lap Traffic fantasy. I'm gonna sneak around the back door a little bit because I know he's been doing some dirt racing to get himself sorted out. I'm going to pick Brad Keselowski.
Oh, interesting.
Very well done. Yep, I picked Brad last week. He finished, so hopefully that works out better for you.
I tell you, another sleeper is Ricky Stenhouse. Watch him.
Yeah.
6 winners this year. Would not be surprised if we see a 7th winner.
So Brent, so because I wouldn't expect you to have listened to anything that we've done previously, but we have been rooting for 4 or 5 years now to end up in a situation where we have 17 winners and NASCAR has to figure out what they're going to do about winning you're in not being an actual thing, and winning you might be in. So we're rooting for new winners every week, and we've got 6 guys out there just wandering around that usually win races that haven't won a race yet.
I know.
So I mean, we're looking at least 13 or 14 winners this year.
Yeah, I've got my pick is 16. We're gonna have 16 winners, 15, 16.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Brent, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed every second of it, and this is some of the most fun I've had on this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell the folks where they can find you and what's coming up next in Brent Dewar?
So you guys invite me back, will you please? And then we'll continue the story. I love talking racing with you guys.
Excellent. Excellent. Love it. You can find him at Brent Dewar on Twitter. Sherwin, close us out.
Yeah, you can find us at PTM Podcast on both Twitter and Instagram. You can find me at Pregame on Twitter and at Andrew L. Sherwin. And we have PTMPodcast.com. We have Patreon/PTM. We're all over the place.
That's right. Yep. And as always, once again, we're donating all money this year, as with every year, to sponsoring drivers. And we've got the big. We've got three more people in now for the bet next week. Not even bet, just commitment, whatever it is. So Lap
That's
Traffic
right.
Fantasy.
We're matching Freddie the Pizza Kitchen on his autism research for how many laps. $1 for every lap that a Cup driver leads in the truck race. Me, Rusty, and Brent, and Brandon.
I love it. And here's the deal. Lap Traffic Fantasy is a total scam. But Lap Traffic Lap Traffic donation for this is a total bro move. I love it. Y'all know where to find us. PTMpodcast.com, at PTM Podcast. As always, I'm Rusty at Tailgate Mayor. Can't wait to talk to y'all next week. We'll be talking Bristol Dirt. It's going to be a blast. We'll see y'all then. Thank you, Brent Dewar, for hanging out. See you later.
Thanks, guys.
There it is. We are a wrap. We are still live on YouTube, but we are, that's the bookend for the podcast. Brent.
It was fun, guys. I enjoyed it.
Man, I texted Sherwin earlier and I said, this might be the greatest podcast in the history of PETM. And we've had a lot of great people on the show. It's just about getting that perspective that we don't get every day from, from anybody else. And it's something, what was it? It was, you know what? We sit here and do this podcast after we go to work every day, and so I always forget names later on. But president of AMS,
Ed Clark.
Ed Clark.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, I'll come on the show." Or even before that, he said he told us. I think Sherwin had tweeted some pretty pointed questions at him, and he said, "Why don't y'all just come see me?" And so we did, and it was a really funny story. we were at AMS. We had all of our gear on for we had our hats for probably Casey Kane was still driving then, so we had Casey Kane hat, and we had we just looked like NASCAR fans. And we walk up to
with beer,
with beer, and we walk up and we say, yeah, we're here to meet Ed Clark, and the lady at the front desk was like, no, you're not. And we're like, just look us up in the Rolodex and whatnot. We're here to talk to Ed Clark. And she goes, all right, give me a second. And she calls up Ed and like, hey, these two Wahoos are, they say here they're here to see you. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'll be right there. And she's like, she hangs it up. She's like, he'll be right here? Like, evidently, y'all are actually you weren't lying or anything? Like, no, it's cool. It's cool. Go Casey. Woo! But so we had, I guess the whole
sometimes
point of
you
that,
have to make the wrong kind of noise to get the right kind of reaction.
But
that's the way it boiled down.
The whole thing is just being able to talk to people in this sport. That's something that I don't believe you can do in any other sport or other podcasts that are going on and whatnot. It's so cool to interact with folks, Brent, like you. So thank you so much for hanging out.
Next time we'll chat about the charters. I see lots of noise about charters. I'm one of the co-creators of the charter system. So
that's something, it was something
okay. Write it down, Rusty.
Another session of what it's.
Let's go ahead and book Brent for 3 months from now.
That sounds good.
or maybe sooner, and we'll talk about charters.
We get Rob Kaufman and I on together. That'd be awesome.
I'm super excited.
That would be cool. If you can
He's
bring Rob Kaufman in,
he's a good guy. Yeah,
that would be fun.
Yeah,
I think because
tough negotiator, but he's a racer like us.
Yeah, we're actually just not dumb enough that we can actually probably understand what he has to say. Despite the way we sound,
just barely not dumb enough.
We kind of understand a lot of this stuff, but But the reason why we have people like you on is because there are things that we don't understand, and it's super interesting to have people like you on that can give us insight to things that we don't have a perspective for, and that's important. It's important for us as fans to learn more things about how the business works and how the industry works. And you don't know until you learn. So that's at the end of the day.
When I was at Chevy, and I was starting a social media, Twitter, way back in, I don't know, 03, 04, early stages of Twitter. And what I would do is if somebody had in their profile that they were a Corvette owner, or they had Chevy, I would follow them and I was like the general manager of Chevrolet. So fast forward to NASCAR, I did the same thing. So and my Twitter handle at NASCAR, it's personal, but it's my professional one. And I did it all myself. And I would go in, and if somebody had NASCAR in their bio, I would follow them. And these people would wake up like 2 months later. Oh my God, the president of NASCAR is following. We'd have these kind of exchanges, which led to the tweet ups and things like that. And I remember talking to a bunch of why are you following me? And I said, well, you're a NASCAR fan. I mean, I've got one job in the sport. I'm trying to bring I've got a driver's council, I've got a manufacturer's council, team owner council, but I've got a fan council, but I get data from the fan council. And when I was at Chevy, I was taught to bypass the research and go directly to the customer. And so that's what I did. And so I still probably have 6,000 of those people that I follow that I'm not at NASCAR anymore, but it's still part of the relationship I built with them over that time period. So it's been a cool technique, and it's been fun to kind of, learn about the sport from the fan.
I'm taking all kinds of notes for the next time that we have you on, if you would be so, kind to not be offended by, the idiocy that you saw tonight. But
I'd love to come back. We'll continue it. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
But one of them, we were I don't know about now for Sherwin, but I kind of gave it up. But we were both members of the NASCAR Fan Council, and so it was filling out that stuff every week and talking about the race and talking about whether we win or not. It was kind of fun because that was back when we were going to 8-9 races a season. So every week, did you go to this race? And once a month, I was like, yep, went to that race, and here's what I think and stuff, and thinking about or at least talking about with you how that fed into what decision making was going on would be very interesting.
Yeah, so I got the raw data every Tuesday morning from the fan council from the weekend race, and I would get the raw data, and then I would get the verbatims, and I would get, and so it all that stuff mattered. You could see some of the fans in the fan council were kind of cooking the books a little bit, but you can read through that and still get the gist of what they're trying to say. And some people only can communicate by complaining, and some people only can communicate by sending you roses. And you gotta filter through those two pieces to try to understand how you guide the sport in a certain direction. So the fan council, it's unique to NASCAR. It's a major thing that we talk to with sponsors and understand that, we've got a big fan base, but they're just not random people. They're actually giving us inputs and thoughts and, how we try it and still protect their privacy, which is cool. So,
I'm going to write that down as another one. You just said it's sponsors. So from the sponsor point of view, switching hats and everything, we'll definitely need to talk about that too.
I'm pretty excited what they've done with because when I was at Chevy, and we can talk about this next time. When I was at Chevy, we spent a lot of money on our brand, right? And so it always, if you're a good CMO, it always bothered you to say another brand, right? I would never say Nextel. I would never say Winston Cup. I would say the Richmond race or something like that. And because I was playing with Chevy. So it was my psyche. And so we used to sponsor, we were one of the major sponsors of the Olympics, the GM. And so there was 5 different major sponsors, and you all were non-competing sponsors, right? It was us, and there was, Coca-Cola and somebody else. We were the only automotive. And so when I came to NASCAR and we had, Sprint, I really wanted them to get to what they have today. That was an early pitch is, can you have a Geico and a Coca-Cola and 5, and they collaborate across to sponsor, because it's very difficult for any one sponsor to sponsor any sport, like Nextel did, Monster did. And they all did a great job. But I think what you want to do is not move to exclusivity. You want to move to inclusive. You want as many sponsors in the sport as possible, not chase one away. So when Nextel came in, they did an awesome job, but it chased away, Alltel and, AT&T and, all those kind of guys. And it was a price for that. And it was very important for the sport at the time. So I'm definitely not being critical. It was important, but I really like the trajectory they're going on in trying to get these sponsors across the board, major sponsors, and then it fills the feeder system sponsors all the way to the track level and all the way to the teams. So yeah, we can spend a lifetime talking about that stuff. I'm excited.
And I think we would probably, that would be interesting to us because being the kind of people we are, the STEM types, there's something very interesting about how you approach marketing and why you would approach it the way you do. And we watched, Nextel chase Alltel and AT&T out of the sport, and they haven't come back.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah. It's hard, right? I mean, it's hard. I mean, like when I was a GM, we sponsored everything. And the best ROI we had football, we had everything. The best ROI we had at Chevrolet was NASCAR by far.
Really?
By far. And we track every single one, return on market investment. And NASCAR was by far the best. And part of it is it's true then and it's still true today. The fans support the brands. Mm-hmm. It's not the case in basketball or other sports, right? It's embedded into the brand. Coca-Cola is part of the sport. Coca-Cola advertises in other sports, but it's part of NASCAR. And so Chevrolet was part of NASCAR, and we were rewarded for that investment in the sport in sponsoring Dale Earnhardt and Richard Childress or whatever through the years. And that's what's interesting about NASCAR versus any other sport. And all of that's changed over time, but it's still true today as it was when I was GM.
Well, that's a good point.
So sorry to interrupt you, Rusty, but that's one of the things I've tried to communicate with people, via Twitter, because that's obviously the most common place to interact with folks. Is one of the things that has changed so significantly over the last 10 years in NASCAR is how much of the sponsorship is business to business versus consumer. So you, Brent, and me, me, Andrew, and me, Rusty, we can't go buy an Ally. I mean, we can go apply for a loan, but we can't go buy an Ally like we used to be able to go buy a DeWalt tool or to go shop at Home Depot.
Or Ericsson. That was a big one. Like when Ericsson came on, it's like they're nothing but B2B. Yeah. Yeah,
or go you name it. Go buy Kellogg's cereal. I mean, Cheez-Its, whatever, whoever, those are consumer brands, and we're seeing those things wander away from the sport. And I wonder, what the business model that creates that situation where you see consumer brands not interested really in being part of it. And it being more B2B.
It's both. I mean, and I don't know if you saw my tweet. I was driving to Tennessee, and I got all the choices on the highway to stop, and I stopped at Love's. I took my picture, and bathrooms are clean, prices are great, and Indianapolis, Daytona 500 winners. I mean, so it's in my blood. I mean, I was a fan, and I'm not different than any other fan, and had my choice of rest stops, and I picked it. I picked Pilot on the way back, so it was the Xfinity race going on, so I supported them on the return trip. But there's both. I would say the B2B part is important for the race teams, and so a lot of that, you saw with Eris. I mean, it was a technology play when you saw Microsoft Azure with Hendrick, back in a few years ago. But those guys that were the Microsoft guys are still big fans of the sport, and they've gone on to other industries and business. So it may be a B2B at one play, but it could be a B2C the next. So you get both. We always had both before. I think the difference is when we went from a single car brand, so it was always, DuPont, 24, or Jimmy Johnson was just Lowe's. Those days of doing one single car, although it's great for the brand and great for the driver and better for the fans in some respects, it's a different economic model today. There's just too many. So, for example, for me at GM, my budget didn't go up, but the number of sports that entered to take my spending dollars went up. There was no MLS when I started, but MLS is pretty cool. It doesn't get the investment NASCAR gets, but it was getting something. So the pie just gets sliced a little bit finer. And so you just had to work harder at, better return on that investment. Could you activate at a track? Could you do something digitally? And so you worked your assets. College sports was really just TV. There wasn't activation. They've done a great job at taking some of those dollars from everybody, and not just NASCAR. And so if the pie is about the same size, the number of slices are cut a little bit finer.
Yeah. So, it's funny. You had mentioned it, and so don't hate me, Brent, but I, being a Rusty Wallace fan in '04, of course, he drove Dodge at the time. And to this day, I drive a Dodge Ram. So, to your point,
I love Dodge. Yeah. I tried to get him in the sport a long time. I love Dodge.
Yeah, yeah. So to
my demon, I had a demon shirt. I took it off, so you think that I was selling Dodges. But, yeah. But I wish they're all in there. Yeah,
yeah.
Have you driven a Demon?
I have. I actually went to the launch. The head of Dodge invited me. We were negotiating with them in NASCAR at the time, and which is why the next car is important. The next generation car is important in a lot of ways, from a cost standpoint for the teams, but also the ability to bring in new OEMs potentially. So there's a lot of benefit to the new car. And so that was one of the projects we were pushing my whole time there. I'm excited to see it come, and it's not only going to be more brand identification for the OEMs. It's going to be much more cost effective for the race teams. And so, parity will have a better chance. It's still lots of work still has to get done, but it's the racing product that'll make a difference. So I would love to see 2 more OEMs in the sport. We can talk about that next time as well.
Yes.
You got a whole list of things.
I'm writing it down. Yeah. I've already got the show notes.
I mean,
for next
Dodge,
time.
Obviously, or whatever we're calling that now with
Stellantis
Fiat.
Stellantis.
I'd like to see Nissan or Honda kind of tip their hat.
Yeah, I like them. I went on a trip to Korea. They're cool. They're a really cool company as well. They got a very cool CEO who's the son of the founder.
Well, they already have a DOHC V8.
Yeah.
So they're already in the platform.
Everybody races. I mean, every brand races, and it's just a matter of you get them into your series. As long as we were, in the platform we were in, it was hard. I mean, the Toyota, I applaud them. They made a huge investment to come and compete against Ford and Chevrolet, and it was a big part of their marketing strategy of Americanization. And their products are made in America. They get a lot of these people that, quote, anti-Toyota. I mean, Toyota's a huge investor in America, and this is the biggest market. And so they're real. They're a great company. I competed with them very hard in the marketplace and very hard with them on the racetrack. And they're good at both. I mean, yeah, I'm not, even though, they were coming at us at Chevrolet and Ford, I admire the company. Got a chance with NASCAR to go to Toyota and met all their executives in Japan, and they invited us over to understand their culture of the company. It's a quality group for sure. David Wilson he'd be a good guy for you to have. He's I think he's Virginia Tech, so you might have to give him a hard time about that.
We're all right. We're cool. We can hang.
We might have to give him a little snap, but that's okay.
David Wilson's one of the jewels of motorsports for sure.
It's funny you mentioned too. It was 13 years ago at Atlanta that Kyle Busch won the 08 Cobalt Tools 500. It was his first win with Gibbs and Toyota's first win in the series. I've had that note, I think, for like 3 weeks now, because I think it was 2 weeks ago that it was the anniversary. But
yeah, they're pretty good winners, pretty good learners. They've won a few since then.
The white Snickers car.
Yeah. So we were, and me and Sherwin were obviously there for that. So anyway, Brent, I don't want to keep you up too late, man. This has been
That's amazing. Cool, guys. I appreciate it. Hope to see you at the track one day. We've all getting vaccinated, which is cool. So
absolutely.
Well, let's do this in a few months' time, and we'll talk some more racing.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, Brent. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Thanks, guys. Peace out.
Thank you, Brent.
Take care.
Cheers. Almost got you. There we go.
All good. There we go. Sherwin. Boy, I tell you what, we've got. Boy, I tell you what, I say, we've we've got an entire show
we need
sheet.
to watch some Foghorn Leghorn, I think.
We've got an entire show sheet for next time. That I don't know what to say. The perspective and everything else. I mean, we didn't even talk about this week's races. I think in the when me and Sherwin were texting before this, I said, yeah, I put together a show sheet, but we're probably not going to use it. We're just going to talk. And that's exactly what just happened. No regrets. That was so much fun and so cool. And like we said with the whole, like, I have a whole new show sheet. There's so much more to talk about and everything. I'm super excited. So that was a blast. That's super. I don't even know what to say. Like, I'm stumbling over words. That was so cool.
Dude, that was so much better than I even thought it could be, and I knew it was going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely. And I knew about the charter thing. We just never got to it. And so, we'll do it next time. And the fact that he's willing to come on again means we didn't, greatly offend him or his family or anybody. So.
Right, we didn't denigrate him.
Yeah, everything's good.
We didn't run him off.
Right. But no, that was.
I'll get him
fantastic.
back. June. I'll look for June.
Absolutely. Well, folks, on the YouTube, we're going to shut off this thing. It has been a pleasure talking with y'all, talking with Brent. I hope you enjoyed it. And everything's up on iTunes now and on Twitter and the homepage and everything. So go download on your favorite spots and re-listen again and tell your friends. And definitely, we'll market this one out there because this was fantastic. It's people need to hear this, and it's not because it's PTM. It's because hearing Brent Dewar or Brent Dewar, I evidently mispronounced his name. But
that's on me.
Talk.
I thought I heard him call himself Dewar, so whichever.
It's all good. So anyway, folks on YouTube, thanks for hanging.